This is TechStrong TV.
All right, episode 74 of Infrastructure Matters, because it does matter. As normal, we've had this is the second straight week that all three of us have been on. Camberley, Dion, welcome back to, I would say this has been a action news-packed week. There are plenty of earnings to talk about. There are some other industry news, but we're a couple of weeks away from the biggest AI conference of the year, GTC, and I expect, based on all of our pre-briefings, that the next week or two is going to be, we're gonna wish for another half an hour for this show with the amount of AI related news that's going to be coming out over the next 2 or 3 weeks. But we have plenty of other stuff to talk about. Camberley, you're the one who follows the markets for us mostly and keeps us honest on what these tech giants are doing financially. Big news is coming out of both HPE and Broadcom this week.
Yeah, many years ago, I started reading the earnings transcript. It's too bad. I'm not going to listen to the thing, but I'm going to read through the earnings transcript because it's in the Q&A often that all the details come out, or somebody, they're plowing in there is like, yes, I want to ask those questions. But we did have two big ones this week, which was HPE and Broadcom. And on the Broadcom one, the thing that I'm looking at the most is the VMware items. But the big news for them was not the VMware, it was all the AI stuff. And, he's making a lot of money. I mean, let me run some numbers here through you. It was like revenue was up 25% year on year. The consolidated EBITDA was up 41%. Yes. I mean, I was like, okay, that's a lot.
It's a massive company.
That's a lot.
That's a big number on top of a big number.
That's a big number on top of a big number. And most of this was all driven by the AI level.
Although the VMware stuff didn't do bad either.
No, well, I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, and the VMware stuff did really well. But everything did well. I mean, they're hitting on all cylinders here. Or what do you say when you have a electric car? You don't hit on cylinders, you hit on something else. Anyway.
I guess electric motors. I don't know. That's really good. You're on all kilowatts. I'm not sure.
You're tapping it from every battery. I don't know.
Tapping it from every battery or whatever. But I think the big things here that I took away is that he talked about how big these hyperscalers are going, where they're going, and that they're building the XPUs, et cetera, to be able to support these very, very large areas that they're expecting to go. So they have a quote unquote, we have a view towards scaling clusters of 500,000 accelerators for hyperscaler customers. Doubling the RAID X capacity of the existing Tomahawk sites, these kind of things are going out. And then he goes on to talk about what the market looks like. Expect the 3 hyperscale customers that they have will generate a serviceable market of range of 60 to 90 billion in 2027. We're not talking 230. We're talking, the immediate front that are talking about. Yeah, your eyes got really big there, dude. This is, it's just huge.
Their outlook was as impressive as their earnings. So their stock's up 3.5% this morning. The market really needed this news. That was good. Good to see.
And the other piece of it that I love to watch is this infrastructure software revenue, which is basically VMware. A couple quotes coming directly. As of the end of Q1, which is what they were announcing, 70% of their largest 10,000 customers have adopted VCF. So whatever, whether or not they got one hand behind their back that they're, ripping them with, or however they're doing, they're making it up. So they're making it. Q1 infrastructure software revenue, $6.7 billion, was up 47% year to year. That's people figuring it out. So it's just, the numbers are huge. In this one, I am not, maybe you guys can comment on this one because I don't know exactly the product line here on this piece of it. But as of today, in collaboration with NVIDIA, we have 39 enterprise customers for the VMware Private AI Foundation. That seems like a really tiny number.
Well, it's
depends how big those customers are, but yeah.
Yeah, but the ambitions of VMware Cloud private cloud, private AI cloud, whatever they call the product, is very, very big. It's this idea that once enterprises get to the inferencing stage, they're not going to want to go to cloud. So all of these AI accelerators they're selling into the cloud providers on the chip side, the enterprises are going to go more traditionally and have more air-cooled systems, more traditional systems, and even for some of their big AI workloads that's on the inferencing side, they're going to be shared. So, and actually, VMware has presented several times on Tech Field Day on their private AI solution. It is a very solid solution designed at NVIDIA. And they went from 0 customers, I think, last year to, 30 some plus customers now. It's pretty good. That's more than 100%.
Well, when you come from 0, that's okay, I guess. So, and then, I would comment on the VMware piece of it. At the same time, we've seen Nutanix, which is the HCI guys with, the anti-no VMware tax people. They did very well too. And they're equating it to people migrating over. So I'm thinking that's probably a lot of the, Hawk is very focused on the big customers. I'm going to keep the big customers. Those are the ones that are most profitable. The rest of the guys can disappear if you want to disappear. And some of those are probably going to Nutanix because it makes a whole lot of sense to do that.
Yeah, it's a weird effect, right? I talked to the folks at Scale Compute, who also competes with VMware, said their enterprise business is up 400%. I don't know how big their enterprise business was to start, but up 400%. So they're benefiting as well. I think the challenge for Hawk, according to my insiders, is that the commercial group, which is below enterprise, is actually outperforming the enterprise. So Broadcom is reinvesting and making sure that they keep some of these smaller companies that is surprisingly, from my data, growing the business.
Wow. Well, I didn't catch on that one, but that's real. That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't think it was in the report, but it was just from my conversations from some of the folks who are inside VMware. They are very happy with the progress that the commercial team has helped. And for those that want to just do, your snooping and deeper dive, look to see who leads one business over the other and what changes have been made over the past year. You get an indication of where the growth at outside of the report.
So on the flip side, our buds at HPE had not the best quarter. And
although
that was
revenue was up 16%, it's the outlook that's, I think, really hurting them. Laying off 3,000 workers in anticipation of $1 billion in lower revenue due to tariffs, since a lot of their equipment is made in in Mexico. That's a challenge.
The other piece that they got hit on is the margins for their servers. So their margins get down from 11 plus % to 8%. So, almost 3.5% that they dropped on the margins, and they blamed that, or they, basically said that the mix of GPU. So, they're paying money to NVIDIA in order to ship the Blackwells or whatever they're shipping. Aggressive pricing in the market. So some of the quote unquote sales discipline that was missing, but it was the aggressive market. So we didn't believe we heard that kind of thing necessarily from Dell when they rolled out their earnings, but evidently this had a pretty significant impact here. And then I think part of that is them also looking at how do they reduce some of their cost, which is getting into the 5% employee reduction.
Yeah, I remember about 3 quarters ago, Dell had really blowout numbers, but they took a hit because of the margin on their AI server. The margins, they sold way more AI servers than anyone else in the industry, but that margin was very disappointing. So NVIDIA is winning when it comes to whoever sells their chips. The servers today in both Dell, HPE, Lenovo, and all the OEMs are trying to find value and escape kind of the gravity of the revenue share with NVIDIA and find ways to get a little bit more of that revenue. So I expect to see that raise up in services and the ability to add value beyond just selling the box that NVIDIA chips comes in.
Well, the industry is supply constrained. OpenAI says they can't release ChatGPT 4.5 because they can't get enough GPUs, and so that's for limitation of HPE is not a favored vendor, and can get the chip supply like maybe a Dell can. Then they're at a competitive disadvantage, and that's really how the industry is shaping up right now. Because who's the best friend of NVIDIA?
Yeah. So they did talk about how well, GreenLake was up, although they were up significantly, although it's year to year, although the quarter was, not looking as fabulous quarter to quarter, but that's Q4 to Q1 easily can happen. And they did highlight, the storage person has to say, they did highlight their Alletra MP is shipping in triple digits, but then again, last year, it wasn't doing as well. So again, you're coming from a lower number into a bigger number. So they're picking it up. One of the things we're seeing about HP is they're deprecating a lot of their other technologies for the Alletra MP. So they're doubling down on this focus on the MP, and the other stuff kind of fades away, and they'll be winding that down over time is what we're expecting to happen. The last thing they did, well, not last thing, but one of the other things I brought up is that they did highlight that they had launched the KVM offering. They said that there's a lot of engagement and interest. We've seen a lot of engagement and interest all over the place. So, it's kind of odd that on one hand, Octane is making gobs of money off of VMware, and so is everybody else. How does that work?
Yeah, I think you're just unlocking a lot of value. The price increase from one means that the person who increases the prices, and they have the captive audience that VMware has, they're going to make a lot more money. And then for everyone, there's a huge gap between those who can afford VCF and VMware and those who cannot and needing to use solutions. So now these solutions that were too expensive or too complex to migrate to are looking pretty enticing. I talked to some folks in the community, the Proxmox, which is based off of KVM. I originally laughed at the idea of enterprises using Proxmox. I'm like, Proxmox? If you don't need to know hypervisors to know that Proxmox was never seriously considered a great alternative to VMware, but price increases make you do funny things.
You might change your mind given the community has sprung up around it to write scripts and provide services to help customers migrate. So this has been kind of a weird rising tide raises all ships kind of thing. Not the way I would have thought, it would have been played, but there on the vendor side, there's no one unhappy with Broadcom creating more opportunity for the rest of the market while Broadcom makes more money. That's
an interesting perspective on that one. I do like that. So the last thing you mentioned, Dion, you talked about the tariff situation. Antonio addressed that and what they were looking at for mitigation purposes. He talked about how, they manufacture around the world. So it sounds like what they're looking at doing is manufacturing closer to where they're going to ship or something along those lines. We'll see. And the other piece of it was also with Broadcom being asked that question. Part of it is seeing how this is going to shake out. Because it is the great unknown. You don't know tomorrow Yeah, totally unpredictable. So anyway, that's my commentary about that. That's enough about earnings. I'm done.
So you do have a note for Vast Data here. They're not a publicly traded company. And I do, there's a follow-on thought because we both were in the briefing yesterday, and their founder, Renan, really had a really provocative statement, and I'll share that after you share your thoughts on their results.
Well, they just talked about how they are massively growing. They won't give you any numbers,
No.
but they're also for a quote unquote, whatever they are, multi-billion-dollar startup valuation. They are cash flow positive. They don't have to take any. They got asked about IPO, and it goes like, don't know. We don't have to do anything. We're not looking for any money. So the growth is there.
And to kind of stick the pin on kind of like they were doing a victory lap yesterday, and one of the analysts asked Renan, well, what happens when someone doesn't want to put their data in a proprietary vast data store? And his response was basically, hey, if you have hundreds of thousands or millions of rows, go ahead and use another solution. But if you have billions of rows of data, you have no other solution than vast data. So good luck finding something else to put your data at. If you have the size of data that requires a vast system, there is no other competition. I think we need to put that statement to the test in our Signal 65 labs at some point, but I thought that was a really provocative statement yesterday.
So that person that asked that question, whether or not you know that or not, is Brad Shimon. He just joined us.
I did not know that was Brad. I had it on in the background, and that was a very good question by Brad. Hat tip to Brad on the Future Group side.
There we go.
All right. Agentforce, which is, I don't know. No, not Agentforce. The Salesforce released Agentforce 2DX and Agent Exchange. I don't know what any of that means. So, Dion, you just wrote a big, brilliant report on AI agents. Help us understand what Salesforce is delivering to the world.
Sure. Well, and actually we have two major reports on AI agents, because that is, as we talked about last week, AI is arguably a new layer in the infrastructure world. And the hot new part of that is agents. So this is AI. Instead of just generating content, it takes action for you, typically via APIs. So you want to do something, it basically orchestrates for you. It's great. It's basically an adaptive AI orchestration layer. And Agentforce has been Salesforce's big foray into that. They've got several thousand paying customers. They say, depending on whose numbers you look at, it's between 1,000 and 3,000. They charge $2 a transaction. That's how confident they are that it can do things that other systems can't. And as part of our work, we actually interviewed a bunch of Agentforce early adopters to say, all right, so what are you seeing? And what's interesting is it does seem to be a very adaptive. Generative AI is quite malleable in that it doesn't really, it's not as intolerant of what it can accept in terms of, you can give it any kind of content, any kind of API, and it just figures out how to use it, how to work with it.
Is it a chat bot or something? I don't even know what Agentforce is.
It can be a chat bot, but it's a chat bot that does things for you. So I talked to the CIO of a large roadside service center, and their biggest challenge is that people only use their service 2-3 times a year, so they don't remember how the website works. And so people come in, they want to update their credit card, they want to change their address, they want to ask about some specific benefit or use it. They can't figure out how to do it because they don't use it that often. So they have an Agentforce bot that says, they log in and the agent knows everything about you. And you say, I want to update my address. And it just says, okay, well, what is your address? And you type it in free form and it says, okay, I've updated it for you. You're good to go. It's that sort of thing. Or I want to update my credit card. They're like, fine, tell me what it is and I'll go ahead and update the record for you. So it's that kind of very simple thing. And that's what we really saw. That although there was one Agentforce customer that was doing very sophisticated things. They were trying to recommend prescription drugs, and they had to do it by processing all the regulations at the federal, state, and local level, the insurance policy, and overlay all of that. And AI is really good at sorting through all of that and then making a recommendation. And then a human doctor has to check it to make sure that it did it right. But a process that took a week to sort through all of those different layers of regulations and overlap them and come up with the Venn diagram so they could figure out what to recommend. It took a week on average. Now it just took 10 minutes using Agentforce from start to finish. That
would be amazing for some of the cocktails they put together for cancer and that kind of treatment.
Oh
that
yeah,
would be
it takes into account all your current drugs and everything. Yeah, so the AI is really good at doing that very complicated analysis based on the patient file and the actual regulations. So they didn't expect it to be able to do all of that, but they found that was its superpower, is being able to, dump all this content to make this decision. It sorts through all of the documents and then it explains what options you have available, and it's that expandability that is also very good. Yeah. So Agentforce is one of the leading agent, and it was part of our report. We did a study of all the commercial enterprise class agents right now. So we looked at SAP, Joule, ServiceNow, Microsoft, Oracle, looked at all the different agent frameworks, and this is going to be the big growth area with AI, and so Agentforce scored very well at the top of the charts. But that was not all. They had a big event this week, TDX. Salesforce did, and they announced Agentforce 2DX, which is an autonomous AI agent. There's no chatbot window. It just watches your data, and then based on changes to your data, it acts autonomously. And this is very powerful stuff, but I have a lot of concern about how we're going to govern these sorts of things. So as data changes in your enterprise, you tell it what to watch. It then will fire up agents based on the changes in the data and go out and do things for you. It's autonomous agents. So
this gets back to the question that Brad had asked Vast, right? Yeah. Because you're putting that on the current transactional database, and the companies you're talking about are probably pretty darn large, that from an enterprise standpoint, and they're not going to want to move their transactional database because I'm going to drop this agent stuff right on top of it. But then again, this is more of the application as opposed to the inference. Maybe, well, I guess it is part of the inference engine that you would consider it as opposed to a training database. So,
Agentforce will work with whatever you have. They like it. It tends to work better if you use Data Cloud. But you can plug pretty much anything you want into it. It's very interoperable.
And the importance of all of this, me and Dion had kind of this meta virtual conversation. He really provocative report on our blog post on LinkedIn, where you talked about SAP upgrades, ERP upgrades in general being a trap. Like if you want to upgrade your ERP system today, or specifically SAP, you have to go to the cloud. There is no real
and you have to
upgrade path anymore.
And pay SaaS pricing. And there's a lot of
SaaS pricing. And people are seriously looking at alternatives. I'm going to have on a special conversation. I think it's under NDA still, but there's a major company looking, if not having already replaced their SAP environment with agents. So this idea of, there's transactions that happen on a bus. So let's say it's an object storage bus, like a vast data maybe. And then that kicks off an event, and that event is an agent, and a workflow happens. So why do I need to pay SAP, Oracle, Microsoft for the luxury of their monolithic application when I can basically build these intelligent business workflows with agents from the ground up? So this is a really, really important part of infrastructure to look at, because that itself, that capability, just like message buses are now part of the IT infrastructure budget and line item, object storage is. I don't see agent infrastructure being any different than those pieces of infrastructure that companies build solutions on.
Yeah, and it's interesting times, and Salesforce with its $2 a transaction is going to price itself out of that particular market, and this is what we have to look at. But we've done our own economic calculation. The agent market is going to address about $6 trillion of the $50 trillion workforce economy. Yeah, that's how much the labor market is worth. Is 50 trillion, and about 6 trillion of it is addressable with today's agents as they're currently realized in the industry.
So what does that mean? I mean, the workforce economy is what we paid the workforce, and you're saying that the agents is going to be able to address
about 6 trillion of that. Yeah.
6 trillion of that, which displaces people, or it moves us moves people to.
In the short term, it displaces people. In the medium term, it should create a lot of AI jobs. So
yeah, and I did a little follow-on post. I had a really great conversation with Brian Lau of AWS about how they're using, specifically how he's using AI agents to accelerate his application development. He hasn't lost his job. And so there's a really interesting transitionary period around AI and the workforce that's worth having a deeper conversation. But moving on.
Well, actually, let me just put a cap off the announcement. Agent Exchange was also announced, and it is a digital labor market, but it's not people inside of it. It's only AI skills. And it's agents to do whatever, agents to audit something or, audit a financial service, agents to do customer service, agents to help you manage and run a marketing campaign. So yeah, it's we're all going to end up competing with the bots unless we're focusing on running the bots and managing and governing and putting guardrails and securing them. And that's where the new jobs are going to be.
All right. We would have normally, this would have been at the head of our rundown before, but it's just another $100 billion. TSMC committing $100 billion to AI. You know what? I jokingly say this, but I'm serious. I don't know how much of these investment announcements are real.
Exactly.
There is nothing that holds any of these companies accountable to deliver on any of these commitments. We saw this over the years. I don't care the administration with Foxconn, with the investment in Wisconsin. These folks make these, and even in some cases get tax benefits from it, and they just never the jobs and actual investment never materialize. So another $100 billion
in 2018, $350 billion they announced, and they didn't come anywhere close to actually doing that much. So
is this like a feeling good about that I'm having a building named after me or something?
Well, it's great press release. This is the significance of this is that it's $100 billion onshore, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is, and we don't have time to go through it, but the president, kind of pushed back on this idea that the CHIPS Act is even needed. Intel has committed to building the chip factory in Ohio, delayed to 2030. The construction is, but they're under obligation to do so. And the president noted that TSMC made this obligation without any money from the government. All right. Starlink. Let's end on this conversation around Starlink. Am I going to be able to stop paying my $165 a month to Starlink? Diana, what do you think?
Now, if you look at the coverage maps, I mean, this is the issue. Is Starlink has this unparalleled coverage right now, and you can't beat the bandwidth that's available, and you can't beat the pricing. Now, Eutelsat has acquired OneWeb. That's the other alternative. I always, just before we got on the show here, I looked at the coverage map. I mean, it's far less. And late last year, I met with some of the team at Amazon's Kuiper. I mean, they're planning to go as big as Starlink, but they got 2 satellites up, right? So right now, Starlink is still the best game in town, but that's going to change with the geopolitical winds shifting with tariffs. Starlink is, recently got dropped by the Canadian government. They're going to replace in Ukraine a lot of the Starlink with Eutelsat, and everyone's busy trying to get new constellations up. So yeah, it's a new world where locally sourced IT is considered a strategic advantage, a geopolitical advantage. So
the challenge is getting those satellites. Yeah, the challenge is getting those satellites into orbit. It's not like there's a lot of competition to launch satellites.
No, the capacity doesn't exist. Except a lot of new rockets are coming online. So you got Vulcan, Neutron, the Bezos with his Blue Origin has. I'm trying to remember that New Glenn. A massive new rocket. It just launched for the first time. So the capacity is coming, and that's going to change the complexion of the industry, of the constellation industry quite a bit.
Yeah, but the availability of the solutions, I can now walk into Home Depot and buy a Starlink startup kit. I still complain about coverage because, hey, I complain about slow internet on a airplane. So I'm going to complain about Starlink coverage, which is still awesome. And I'm looking forward to there being competition, being more access, more internet access, more options for the globe. Is better for the global economy and helping people transition to an AI-driven economy, which is all very, very scary.
So how heavy is that stuff? Because I got a backpacking trip coming up in May.
So talk
Starlink
to
Mini?
the
Starlink
there's a
Mini, you ever taken
Starlink
a
Mini.
panel?
The Patrick Moorhead has a Starlink Mini where he tested that, and I think he was on a backpack trip. It's backpackable. It's actually if I was into backpacking, I'd carry one for emergency use.
Yeah, it's not for ultralight. Not for ultralight backpacking though. That's the problem.
No, but we're talking about Camberley backpacking, which is not ultralight. I'm sure her bag is about 30 or 40 pounds.
Yeah, it's usually about 40, depending on how long we go. But we're in the desert, so we have to carry water. So that makes it really heavy.
Water is heavy. We need to find dehydrated water that we just have to add water to get water. So that's it for this episode of Infrastructure Matters. We are going to be out a lot over the next few weeks. As I mentioned, GTC is kicking up, and all the kind of spring tech shows are coming up. You can follow me, Elon. Camberley has a bunch of stuff going on that she'll share over the next couple of months. Stay tuned for more just coverage from 6-5 Network in general. This is going to be an amazing part of the year of the industry.